never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
Never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it.
Ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the United States to a whole nother level.
Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And you know I come back with that video just to make you think.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Support this great content by hitting the Cash App and by joining the Patreon.
And we know never to allow a good crisis to go to waste, because it will allow you to do things you never would have been able to do. And we know a crisis allows majority of times for you to print money and then also move the sheep. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you. And we hear the drums are beating, and we're getting event after event. We have the FBI director testifies at the Senate that the drums are beating may bring an attack in the U.S. And guys, we know there's a lot of moving pieces going on. We have all the immigration going on in the U.S., and then we have the drums are beating globally. So we know something big is about to happen. And remember, the Crypto Teacher told you.
Anthony, you were not physically, I believe, at the trial. I didn't see you down there. But in name, you were certainly in the trial in many ways.
Hopefully the trial will end at some point.
Right. I mean, the ways you've been brought up, everything from how you told Sam Bankman-Fried to wear a tie to introductions made throughout the Middle East, Saudi Arabia's crown prince, the head of the public investment fund there. On the outset, do you buy what Sam Bankman-Fried was putting down? And is there any part of his testimony that you find conflicting?
It's hard for me to imagine saying this because you always put me on the hot seat, but I'd much rather be here than downtown Sonali. So I'll say that to start out the conversation. But I'm very sad by the whole thing. You know, I read through his transcript and his responses this morning, and it's a discombobulation. I think one of the journalists says, well, they murdered him in the beginning of it, and then they stabbed the dead body in the afternoon after lunch. I mean, he has absolutely no defense or plausibility to a defense other than the fact that he, alongside of his cohorts, perpetrated fraud. So I think what's at issue for everybody right now is when does this end and when is his sentencing? You know, I think Sam made the mistake, but the decision to expect at least one of 12 jurors perhaps could think he's innocent or think his youth and inexperience may make him less criminally liable. But I think the prosecutors did a very, very good job of explaining facts-based explanation of his guilt. So we'll have to see what happens, but he's now had his day in court, and I think it's going to be a very sad day for him and his family when this is over. The month of October has probably been the best month in Skybridge's history, for that matter.
Is that all Bitcoin?
A lot of it's Bitcoin, some of it's tech, some of it's newer economy things that have rebounded aggressively since the beginning of the year. But of course, Bitcoin has had a spectacular month. You know, we own a lot of Solana. I think Solana's probably up 70% this month. And so this is just another explanation to people: stay in things, stay convicted, don't listen to the chin music throughout the day, but have a very long-term focus on what you're doing. And we never sold a Bitcoin. In fact, if anything, we accumulated Bitcoin this year at lower prices, and it served us and our clients.
I work with many other influencers, so we share our data. Twitter is shrinking right now, but I want to say right out of the gate, I'm a huge Elon fan. I think he'll fix it. But I'm not spending any money there. I'm getting zero return there. So why would I put dollars there?
There's so much. By the way, I've seen charts. People can make a chart that represents anything. I call it chart crime, right? You can make a chart that makes it look terrible, but it's actually a minor move, just depending on the y-axis. Is Twitter shrinking that much?
It's slowed in the last 2 weeks. I look at this data weekly. It's slowed.
Kevin,
the growth is the shrink is slowing.
Okay, Omid?
Yeah, not at all. And I think we just need a bit of context here. What was Twitter pre-Elon? Pre-Elon, Twitter was a government agency. That's raison d'etre was two things: destroying shareholder value and suppressing the constitutional rights of Americans. Let's take the latter for just a second. During COVID, that platform, at the behest of the Biden administration, and the FBI, respectively, suppressed truthful information about Hunter Biden's laptop and other factual events about COVID, whether cloth masks were effective or whether the vaccine shot would stop spread. You were deplatformed. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Go look at the Twitter files or review Missouri versus Biden or Berenson versus Biden that's making its way up to the Supreme Court. And we'll see that the government used Twitter in order to violate our First Amendment rights. That's horrible. So just alone, if you care about the Constitution, it's an improvement to have Musk there. Let's now talk about the fundamentals for a second, okay? The second part of this. People forget that Twitter peaked at around 60 billion of market cap. And before anyone knew that Musk was interested in buying it, it had dropped 50% to around 30 billion of market cap. They lost over $1 billion in 2020 and $200 million in 2021. Okay, so this was the worst social media outfit out there. It was a dead company, and we'll get into what Musk is going to do to resurrect it. But it has nothing to do with what Kevin's talking about. They don't need to be relying on advertising. He's already introduced subscription revenue that's making hundreds of millions of dollars a year to mitigate what he's lost in advertising revenue. And long term, this is going to be the everything app, where you're going to get people on there for content, which I've invested in. And secondarily, it's going to be in payments. If you can make this a payment processor, you've changed the game.
Can it be, Omid, could it be smaller than it was in terms of just the number of people or bots, fake people, right? Just absolute numbers. Could it be smaller, but more profitable?
Well, of course. He's reduced operating expenses as well, which is another thing he's done. He's reduced the staff by over 50%. Thousands of those people, nobody knew what they were even doing there. So you're going to reduce operating costs. It doesn't matter what the top line revenue was when it was public. They were just bleeding cash and destroying revenue. So here you can make less revenue and be a profitable business. And that's exactly where he's headed. He has 350 million users approximately. Let's imagine even 10% of those started using this as a payments platform once he gets those licenses, which they're indicating will happen by 2024. It's an absolute game changer. You'll match the same revenue, but you'll do it on a profitable basis. That's what I'm betting.
Kevin?
You bet you're betting that, because that's not even proven. If your social media platform, what matters right now is reaching people, and shrinking, that doesn't work for you. And it is the only social media platform I know right now that's shrinking. And so at the end of the day, it maybe turns around. Facts are this equity, forget about the debt, the 40 billion plus valuation has been marked down by Fidelity by 2/3. Look, I'm not saying Elon can't fix it, and I've said already I'm a huge fan.
And we have Scaramucci on the bank man. And we know Scaramucci was in on the movie. It was impossible for him not to know. But Scaramucci admits that he held on to Solana. And those who are part of my Patreon understand. And then we have Kevin O'Leary playing the Hegelian dialectic when it comes to Elon Musk. And we know Kevin O'Leary knows all about the fourth industrial revolution. And we know the plans of X. They want to be the everything app and then plus be a payments platform just like Alipay and WeChat. And if that happens, we know that is a game changer. And then you add in cryptocurrencies, it becomes a one-stop shop. And we had the Biden executive order brings in the alphabet boys. And we know all this new regulation and executive orders are getting ready for this digital transformation. It's never to protect the people, it's there to protect the corporations. And remember, the crypto teacher told you. Now we have Jerome in the house tomorrow. And we have Steve Leisman on the Fed. Higher for longer. But guys, we know with all these geopolitical events, the Fed has the perfect excuse to pivot without anyone noticing they took your money. They printed all this money, create all this inflation, now raising rates to highs in order to fight the inflation that they cause. Yes, guys, you can't make this up, but it is crushing the economy and then also the consumer. And because the drums are beating and the people are so emotional, they won't even think twice that they were played. And the sheep are about to fall for the biggest deception in history. And remember, the crypto teacher told you, because he knows when it comes to the NWO, it's all planned out. You have a wonderful day.
There was a little bit of, hey, this is really happening, particularly when you think about the fact that ChatGPT's first version wasn't publicly released until about 11 months ago. So this has all happened quite fast. The executive order itself, in terms of the requirements and some of the demands that may be coming to companies, I still think they're a bit far off. When you look at some of the reporting requirements under the Defense Production Act, that's really the heaviest or weightiest part of the EO, it applies to models that practically don't exist yet. And so it really is about future frontier models, and everything that's in existence right now has much less rigorous requirements.
Or at least would give the government access to things that it might not be able to access in almost any other context. So what's the important takeaway there?
I was a little taken aback by the DPA requirement. The DPA, the Defense Production Act, it applies to national security, to what the Pentagon can access when and where, but also Homeland Security and FEMA. You tend to see it in hurricanes and ramp up for military action. And I think that's a bit of the risk right now, is that you could see some challenges under the DPA when, frankly, we need it most, when what you're seeing in Ukraine and the Middle East and potentially in the buildup for China invasion of Taiwan. It's a risky time, but nonetheless, I do think that it was a fairly surgical use of the DPA rather than some of the other tools that the administration.
While respondents to the Fed survey expect no additional hikes, they have now fully embraced the higher for longer mantra from the Fed, to the point where no rate cuts are expected until now the third quarter of 2024. Here's the Fed expectations chart from the Fed survey. 100% say rates will be unchanged this week. 5.29%, that's the peak rate. They hold there for 10.4 months until September. It had been July. It had been even earlier surveys suggested the Fed may cut at the beginning of next year. That is now September 2024. The 31 respondents, they include economists, strategists, and managers, fund managers, are divided on the outlook. 42%, they put a 42% probability on there being a soft landing and a 49% probability on a recession. Interestingly, that is now below 50%. On the outlook for the funds rate, here it is. 538 is the current number. 542 end year. There's some percentage folks who think there still may be a hike. 462. So there are some cuts next year, but not as many as have previously been forecast. And then perhaps some normalization by the end of 2025 at 3.74%. Peter Bookvar writes, I believe Fed Chair Jay Powell and company can now be patient, sit back and see how all this tightening that has already taken place on the short end and recently on the long end plays out. And it will play out as higher rates continue to squeeze more and more households. The inflation outlook shows the Fed not hitting its target even into 2025, with some thinking the Fed should be doing more right now to bring it down. 365 end year, about where we are right now. It's 370. And then it does go down next year. But notice 2025, but the end of the year forecast, still 60 basis points. Now, CPI is higher than PCE, which the Fed follows, but they're still not hitting the target. On growth, the slowdown that was supposed to hit, they kept forecasting it anytime, is now forecast to hit next year, 242. They had to bring that 2023 forecast way up, and there's that below 1% 2024 before normalizing in 2025. Respondents on average see the stock market ending the year about where it is right now, but notching some modest gains next year. And then you have a 13% rise from the current rate by the end of 2025. Joe?
A big part of it is why would an investor hold government debt? They've got to be confident about the path for future government debt, and they also have to be confident that it's a process that governs it so it won't get out of control. Well, bad news is the path is pretty much parabolic. It looks like a fighter jet taking off the carrier, just going straight up. Meanwhile, the process is broken. Are you confident there won't be a government shutdown on November 17th? Probably not, but over the next 3 months. And oh, by the way, how many debt ceiling standoffs would we have we had? Is this a government that would be willing to control the path for debt? We got a bad path. We got a bad process. That means that at some point investors are going to get restive. Not yet. U.S. dollar is a safe haven asset, but it's not forever. And the more we issue debt well in excess of our GDP growth, our footprint to be able to pay for it, the more that brings that day forward. So the answer is, for now, yes. Over the longer haul, no. If you're pricing your decision today, take into account there's going to be rocky road.
Going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
And so we'll import Chinese-based CBDC technology. So it's going to be CBDC in a box provided to you by the People's Bank of China.
But every stock, every bond, every currency, every commodity, every piece of art, every private business, every piece of real estate will eventually be a token on a blockchain, an entry on a ledger, permanent and immutable. We will have truth instead of trust, and we will save over $7 trillion a year. 6 to 8% of global GDP is wasted by the friction of the trust industry that's necessary when you have dual entry accounting. With triple entry accounting, which is what a blockchain is, we get rid of all of that friction. It's a beautiful future.
Like what you see in China and their social credit scoring systems, right? If we get identity wrong, it could be a tool to enslave humanity. And if we get it right, it could be a tool to liberate humanity. And as an American, I'm obviously rooting for the one that's on the side of freedom.
Bitcoin is an international asset. And also, I do believe the role of crypto is, it's digitizing gold.
I actually believe this technology is going to be very important. Look at it. We have been part of the huge revolution in investing through ETFs. We believe that ETFs will be changing the whole way we invest. Many people still use it as a means, people are investing it for indexing. No, the majority of people who are putting money in in ETFs are active investors that are buying exposure. The entire bond market is being transformed as we talk right now. I believe the next generation for markets, the next generation for securities will be tokenization of securities. And if we can have that distributed ledger that we know every beneficial owner, every beneficial seller, we all have our code of who's buying, who's selling, instantaneous settlement. And think about it, it changes the whole ecosystem.
Cryptoteacher and the new World Order book, plus the 3 kids books. It's time to re-educate. Also, new to cryptos, Coinbase, Bitrue, Binance. Do not forget book links and crypto links are in the description. The stock channel, guys. Don't forget to go like, subscribe, spread everywhere. You have your Kobo, your chip stocks, your banking, your gaming. While everybody's sitting at home, get home stocks, the Seaver, the biotech stocks. And while everybody's at home wishing, they were still getting that free money. What are they doing? Drinking and smoking weed. Don't forget about those stocks, and you have a wonderful day. The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and agenda of an entire generation to come. Steve Jobs. And guys, I truly believe in this. When you look at the New World Order, they're the storytellers. And that's the reason why I wrote my New World Order book. But guys, now it's time to change the current generation. And I wrote 3 kids books. I love the Trinity because I understand the power that's in it. So I have 3 books. We have an opportunity to change the generation, to educate, not just me, but I want to show you that I take action on a daily basis. And I want you to take action on a daily basis. Whether it's your job, whether it's in your community, we have an opportunity right now to educate the masses. I posted this on my Twitter account. Please share, but this is a short clip of the 3 books There's going to be a clothing line and action figures. Please get these books for your kids, nephews, cousins, friends, so therefore we can start the re-education now. Because as we see, the fourth industrial revolution foundation is definitely here. Robots, algorithms, drones, taking humanity out the picture. We have to re-educate. But let's get into the video.
Part 1. King Joshua and Drama Team save the village. Part 2. King Joshua and Drama Team save New York from COVID 33. Part 3. King Joshua and Drama Team goes to China.
It's mandatory to get part 1, part 2, and part 3 of this series. It's time to re-educate Generation Z.